Welcome to the May 22nd edition of Despierta Boricua, Pro Libertad's video podcast on YouTube. Check out our newest show on repression in Puerto Rico. Please subscribe and turn on your notifications so you can know whenever we post. Take care. Bienvenidos, welcome familia to Despierta Boricua, Despierta Pueblo, Pro Libertad's video podcast on YouTube. I'm your host, Benjamin Ramos, one of the coordinators of Pro Libertad here in New York City, and I'll be bringing you the latest updates on news, culture, and politics from Puerto Rico and throughout the Puerto Rican diaspora. On today's video podcast, we're going to be talking about repression in Puerto Rico. In the past few years, there has been an increase of FBI and police repression amongst the population. Today, we're going to be talking to Jose Escoda of El Frente Socialista to explore what is it that's exactly happening in Puerto Rico. Even though that image is Mafalda, it's actually Jose Escoda. So, bienvenido, Jose. How are you?
Okay, gracias. I'm fine, thanks, and thanks a lot for this chance to talk with the people in the States. I'm sorry about my falda because I don't know how to use Zoom. In my pictures, it's upside down. So let's go with my falda.
That's fine.
She's a good reminder that there are many types of repressions, and there are many ways to defeat it.
And let's talk about that. Jose, what has been happening in Puerto Rico? Again, in my introduction, I talked about that there has been an increase in FBI presence and police brutality, harassment, and arrests in Puerto Rico. Tell us, what is happening on the island and who's being targeted?
Okay. First of all, we should talk about two types of repressions in Puerto Rico. There is the obvious political one against the independentistas, against the Nationalist Party, against the activists. And in that, the latest great example was la compañera Dross, Nina Dross, that for a petardo, for a quarter, something you use in Christmas, she had to spend almost 5 years in jail. Something nobody of the January 6th in Washington, D.C. has been given 5 years for doing what he did. Okay. That includes the assassination of Filiberto Ojeda, includes the hundreds of independentistas that were incarcerated in 1950 to 1960, and all types of brutality against people that protest. Like, for example, the people of Jornadas Acabaron las Promesas, they are arrested just because they're in the street. Just because they are in the street. And the police likes to arrest them. They lose all the cases after that. But the problem of an arrest, and we have to go and give them support and stuff like that. Right now, we have three compas. They're going to be viewed in the tribunal on the 24th of May, just because of May 1st, one of them just got near to the valla. How do you say the valla? What the police put in the middle.
The barricade.
The barricade. He didn't even jump it just because he was near to it. So in that aspect, in Puerto Rico, the police, the FBI, the federal agents, and the insular police are very, very repressive. We must try to understand that in Puerto Rico, the labor movement and the movement, people are tired and sick of what's happening. People are trying to protest. And since the COVID, that we had to stay in our house, the government started to keep us in the house. When we're trying to gain the streets again, the police is trying to keep us calm. They have a new protocol there. They have a new system that it's very, very similar to what happens in the States that you should protest this way. You have to ask for permission. We don't ask for permission. When we're going to protest, part of the protest is that we want to manifest. We want to show that we can protest in our streets where we want to. And the police right now feels that if you look bad, if you look tweeted to a policeman, he can arrest you. But besides that, the worst part of the repression is not against only people that fight, not only the independentistas. It's against our youth and our poor people en los caseríos, en los barrios, our ghettos. For example, in Puerto Rico, right now, there is not a single place where you can build even bullets. All bullets, all arms, all firearms, and all drugs are imported from the United States. The federal government has enough satellites to know what is going around in the world. But in Puerto Rico, they appear arms, they appear bullets, they appear all type of drugs allowed to enter the island via federal government. And when the federal government decides they want to arrest somebody, they know where they are. They go to a place, they arrest 20 kids, they make the show, 20 kids, 15 arms, $1,000, some drugs. Who was the first agent that allowed that to come into our island? And that type of repression is even worse because the FBI then appeared as the heroes of the day. People don't like the people in Puerto Rico don't like to be coerced by the traffic of drugs. We don't like people. Our youth don't have any other chance. They have to work in those places. People don't like it. But when the federal government comes and arrests 15 kids, people applaud them. People like that. But the federal are the first one that allows those drugs and those arms to come in. And they use that and they associate in the general public that communists, independentistas, narcotraficantes, drug dealers, and títeres and pelús, we are all the same bunch.
And they set it up to look like the heroes. They're the ones that create the problem, and then they create the repression, and then they work the public relations like they're doing their job. Tú ves, los federales están haciendo el trabajo de ellos. So it's an interesting perspective on it. They're creating the criminalization that they're taking credit for destroying.
And it's not only in Puerto Rico, the ghettos and the states, they're doing the same thing. It's part of the federal government laws of occupations of the country. This all started when the U.S. government, at the beginning of the 20th century, they had their mainland conquered completely against the Native Americans that were the enemies of the state. They conquered Hawaii, Philippines, Alaska, Cuba, Puerto Rico. They had settled the country. Now they needed something to settle inside. They couldn't use the army because the army can only be used against foreign enemies. And in 1905, 1910, they started what is now called the FBI. And it was an occupation army in order to fulfill the federal agenda. It's a shame that in the States, white supremacists are mainly the groups that denounce that right now. This is not the MAGA making a denounce of the weaponization of the federal government. The federal government has always been weaponized against minority, against the blacks, against the American natives, against the Chicano, against the unions that were communists or anarchists. because that's another thing. They separated Gompers. Gompers was a good leader, labor leader. All the other ones were persecuted by the FBI. The FBI, when people started to talk about COINTELPRO in the 1970s, people thought that was another conspiracy theory. There are the documents there. How the FBI infiltrated and provoked Black movement, women movement, including ecology movement. How the FBI was part of an underground current of repression against political dissent. In Puerto Rico, political dissent is to fight for independence. In Puerto Rico, an independentista can go to jail just for being independentista. Oscar Lopez was 35 years accused of sedition, of wanting to separate Puerto Rico from the States. That's absurd. He wasn't found guilty about explosives or anything like that. He was found guilty of sedition. And the FBI in Puerto Rico right now, it's doing that. The FBI recently, in the last 4 years, have increased their people here by about 400%. There are a lot of agents in Puerto Rico. Those agents need something to do. And what are they doing? They're repressing people. They're attacking the same communities of our poor kids, and they're attacking the leaders of the protests in Puerto Rico. I insist, jornadas acabaron las promesas that added a way to protesting in the streets is one of their favorite targets. And the case on 24th of May, we should set our eyes on that, because we need to support them in that case.
Just a quick thing for our listening audience. Se acabaron la promesa. La jornada Se acabaron la promesa has been an active organization in Puerto Rico, founded around 2015, 2016. It's a multi-generational organization, but primarily of young people that have been protesting against the Promesa bill, La Junta Fiscal, which is the fiscal control board that has taken over Puerto Rico's management. They really have been focused in on these young people, focusing in on them and making sure that if they move to the right, they get arrested. If they move to the left, they get arrested. It's been this very focused campaign, and it's spread around the island, ¿verdad? I mean, we're hearing about how environmentalists are peacefully protesting, and the police appear, the FBI appear, protecting the gentrifiers and people who are trying to privatize the island, and criminalizing the activists that are fighting, for ecological rights and for the maintenance of green spaces. It's gotten very crazy in Puerto Rico. Jose, how is the left responding to this? What is it que nuestros compañeros en la izquierda están haciendo?
Okay, we need to pinpoint that not all the left is left. Many people here in Puerto Rico has bought the thesis, has bought the idea that we're doing things peacefully, that we're going to the Congress, including to the United Congress, that dealing with the junta, doing it the easy way, the peaceful way, we can defend our beaches, we can defend our country. But many people are discovering that that's not true. In our communities, they have the antennas, the big antenna for the phones. They are putting it just side. I have seen it 10 feet from a house. So a huge antenna for phones. People have tried to do everything, but the system is crooked. And as you say, you try to stop a construction and the police starts arresting you, even if the construction crew doesn't have the permissions. What's happening in our beaches It's criminal. The thing is, it happens in every corner of Puerto Rico, every day. Beaches, mountains, even in old houses, and everybody is trying to. We are trying to. Let me tell you, we're trying to show that the only way to do it is by protest. Like many people say, you can move 200 people, you can move 1,000 people to protest against something, but it doesn't make the news until you break a house, until you break a glass of a store. Then the news is that we broke the glass. But it's shameful that the way the press works in Puerto Rico, they only cover when there's violence, even if the protest can be near the house of the news people. And it's a shame because supposedly in a democracy you should have ways of doing things that you do not have to go and destroy property. But the way the system is working, we need the streets, we need to protest in the streets, and we need that people understand that if we do not protest in the streets, our message is obliterated from the system.
So they like sensationalism. They like to be able to take the focus off of the movement and focus in on violence, so that they can say, "Míralo encapuchado," y "Mira la gente, look at these crazy leftists." It's very similar to happens here in the United States. Well, those of us that protest, those of us that do work here, if it isn't sensationalized, if it isn't something crazy, then the coverage either doesn't exist or it's negative. Dime, Jose, let's talk a little bit about responses throughout the island and with the diaspora. What is it that the diaspora can do? What is the support that we can lend Puerto Rico? I know that's always a $10,000 question. We have asked it for ¿cuántos décadas have we been asking this question? How can we help here?
Okay. About that, I should be very careful. In the Frente Socialista, we always say that the diaspora should do what they have to do. That includes, you have to fight in the States also. You need to assert your rights in the United States. We don't have the problems of Bronx in winter. And when you're in Bronx in winter and you don't have heat, that's a main problem. And we're asking the diaspora first that we respect that your struggle is part of our struggle, but you have some characteristics that are peculiar to you, and we should help you in that struggle. And besides that, particularly in this moment, we're calling the attention to a new colonization of Puerto Rico, directed mainly by the Democrat Party and the organizations. We insist they are giving millions of dollars to organizations in Puerto Rico with one condition: they should not talk about independence. Group after group after group can receive their money. They can even be against colonialism, but they cannot be in favor of independence. It's very strange, but it is that way. And it's not something of pure people versus evil people, because one of the problems that we're having in Puerto Rico right now is hunger. In the corner of my house, I live here about 15 years. There's a corner that a church used, since I'm here, used to bring lunches to a group of people. Usually there were about 10 to 15 persons daily. Right now, that group goes from 40 to 60 persons daily in the same corner. So I haven't moved, but the hunger in Puerto Rico has increased a lot. I cannot blame somebody that uses help from the United States or from wherever it comes to try to solve the hunger problem in Puerto Rico. But we have los independentistas, we need to insist that only with independence our problems can be finished. We do not try to fight with the organizations that are trying to solve immediate problems, but we need to try to solve immediate problems, and besides that, we need to keep fighting for our independence. And people are humans. If you're working 7 days a week, trying to give lunch to 200 people in Caguas, it's very hard to also be fighting for independence. Mm. The diaspora should be conscious of this. It's not a fight between one or the other. It's a fight of how to sum both things and how we can transmit the message that if you're hungry, it's because this is a colony. Because people still think that the colony is something like a good business for Puerto Rico. We're trying to make an intense campaign that how the colony exploits us. For example, we are an older generation. We are older population. I'm receiving Social Security right now. But 15% of my salary since I was a kid went to Social Security. What I receive right now, if I have saved it in a plan like Canada or a private plan, I could be receiving twice as much as I'm receiving right now. Because Social Security is wealthy, but the Congress takes that money and eliminates benefits when they want. People think that the colony benefits us. No, where the laws that we are losing our capacity to understand that, because we see what comes to us and we don't see what's taken from us. Right now, Puerto Rico is the country in the whole Americas with the most inequality in economics. It's bigger than what you see in IT. And something like that is sometimes it's difficult to how to transmit and explain that.
And let's get into it a little bit, because you talked about workers in the beginning, and now you're talking about the very real social realities that are taking place in Puerto Rico. Can you comment a little bit about what's happening con Genera Puerto Rico, Luma, and all these contracts that are happening? Because a lot of our folks don't understand that right now, pensions are being destroyed, people's jobs are being taken away from them. They're even with Genera Puerto Rico, they're telling workers, come work for us, but just realize the amount of money you're going to make is going to be lower. You're not getting that many benefits. And if you don't like it, you can stay unemployed. Tell us a little bit about how workers are seeing this repression.
Okay. First of all, the system was very efficient in destroying the principal labor unions in Puerto Rico. One of the strongest unions was la UTIER, la Unión de Trabajadores de Industria y Riego de Puerto Rico. La UTIER was one of the unions that PREPA, the Authority of Energy, had. When I say they, is the system that includes Populares, PNP, Congress people, the President Biden, the Secretary of Energy, are pushing to privatize everything in Puerto Rico, including the energy. But it's not only privatizing. The original system of privatization was, I have a government system, I sell it to a private entrepreneur. The private entrepreneur pays me, and he keeps the business. Right now, the PREPA, the Energy Authority, was not sold. It was given to two companies, and we are paying them to receive it, $100 million a year for one of them. So they don't put 1 cent, and we pay them to receive it. because that's something that goes against any logic. And then the pensions of the workers there, the government said, okay, I don't have the money to pay you. Bye-bye, just like that. You've been working 25 years, 35, 40 years in some place. And somebody comes and tells you, hey, your pension doesn't exist anymore. That's criminal. And besides that, it doesn't exist because the government didn't pay their part of the pension. La UTIER ahora mismo, part of the workers, they had money up to June. After that, they need that the junta keeps approving some money every month or every 3 months. That money existed, but the government stole it. And when the people are saying, they're telling the people, okay, now you can come work with us. We're going to pay you less. You can start making a new retirement plan. I don't know if that retirement plan will be enough because it's private. It's your responsibility. And they're trying to make the people think that if I don't want to do that, I'm being irresponsible, and I don't want the Puerto Rico has energy because they don't have the manpower to deal with the fabrication of energy in Puerto Rico. Most of those plants are old. The same employees say it. They are old. They should have been revamped decades ago, but they didn't. They never did it because the government, they call it the cartel, el cartel del petróleo. The people that were managing the funds, they were just looking for their profits. And right now, Luma and Genera has multiplied, at least my record here in my home is 10 times more power outage that were before Luma. 10 times more. I live in a condominium. I cannot use a gas generator. I cannot use a solar light. People here in Puerto Rico, everybody is trying to have solar panels, stuff like that, but the salvation cannot be individual. But right now, over 50,000 houses in Puerto Rico have solar panels because we cannot trust them. And what we have seen of Luma and what we have seen of Genera, they are not energy companies. They are just invention companies that were created to come to Puerto Rico, not even buy, accept the responsibility. The CEO earns $1 million a year. Who needs to work for the public? And their employees, most of them, I prefer to work in another agency, retired. Some of them have gone to the States because they don't want to be part of that. But some of them have to work. People have debts. People have kids in the schools. We cannot blame anyone that they decide to sign with Genera. But it is very serious what's happening, and it's a shame that one of the best retirement plans of Puerto Rico, they directed it to bankrupt because the government decided to do so. It wasn't a problem of the plan. It was a decision of the government.
And for many of us who've been tracking these cases around Luma and Genera Puerto Rico, I'm glad Jose said what he said. People are experiencing these blackouts throughout the island 10 times more than what used to exist. and then they get their electric bills, they get their energy bills, their water bills, and these bills are outrageous. It's insane the amount of money that people are paying to not receive services. So it's a contradiction there that's driving people to poverty. Jose, we're going to be
my electric bill. Excuse me. I try to save as much energy as I can. My electric bill before Luma was averaging $40 a month. Right now it's $80 a month. It doubled. Just because Luma.
And you're experiencing blackouts. It's doubled, and you're not receiving the services that you're supposed to be receiving. Increíble. Puerto Rico is an island of incredible contradiction, and it's incredibly infuriating to hear that working people are being attacked. You said something about how people are leaving. Let's just end a little bit on that. What's happening on the island? There's so much displacement. People are being forced off of the island. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's something that hurts. My 2 kids are living in the States. My 4 grandsons are living in the States. And every time I think of that, I have to accept that right now, if they were living here in Puerto Rico, they would have it a lot worse than what they have it in Vermont and in Florida. I hate it. I hate it. They are not very good there. So my son lives in Orlando. He works in a restaurant. He's not in the millions of money. But there, he has a steady job and a lot less of violence in the streets. My daughter is living in Vermont. She's making ends meet with her husband, but the educational offers they had in Puerto Rico for the kids, it was a disgrace. Even in Vermont, they're having problems, but in Vermont they have schools, and they have schools that attend the necessity of their kids. Besides that, in Puerto Rico right now, like for example, professionals, teachers, doctors, and nurses. Everybody in Puerto Rico, the average salary in Puerto Rico is, I thought it was 1/2 of the United States. No, right now it's about 38% the salary in Puerto Rico for the same job. For a teacher in Puerto Rico, in private schools in Puerto Rico, there are teachers that are still earning $1,500 a month. $1,500 a month. They can go to Arizona, and in Arizona they start at $5,000 a month plus other expenses. In New York is about the same. Nurses in the States earn 3 times what they earn in Puerto Rico. When you decide to stay in Puerto Rico right now, it's because something particular is saying that this is my country, I don't want to leave. But the options are always there. And when you have kids, when you have debts, when you're trying to do your best and the system is against you, many people leave. That's not new in Puerto Rico. We have been a century. We have a century that people have been exported up to Hawaii, New Jersey, New York, stuff like that. But right now, the professionals that study and prepare to work in Puerto Rico, they don't have a space to work in Puerto Rico. Right now, for teachers that I work in the private sector, it's more economically feasible to work in macaroni grill, cleaning dishes, than to work in a school. Because the salary per hour in macaroni grill is higher than what they pay in schools. So everybody that stays in Puerto Rico knows that. And it's sad, it's criminal, and besides that, the things in the States aren't that easy either. So we're also, for the first time, people that stay in Puerto Rico are helping their sons that go to the States with money. That's something new in and what happens when immigration goes to the States. Everybody migrates. In Puerto Rico, people used to go to New Jersey and send money here. Right now, people from Puerto Rico are sending money to their sons in the States. Not to everybody, but it is also in the States that are having economic problems also.
Brothers and sisters, familia listening in the audience, the gentrification, the repression, the police harassment, the police brutality, the privatization, all of these things come from all of these are symptoms of one major issue in Puerto Rico, and it is U.S. colonialism in Puerto Rico. First and foremost, familia, I want to thank Jose Escoda for talking to us today. We're going to have Escoda on a couple more times. We'll be bringing in other individuals from Puerto Rico and throughout the Puerto Rican diaspora to talk about what is taking place on the island. Jose, muchas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. Thank you for being with us and bringing up all of these issues that a lot of us have to think about, especially to our listening audience that's from the diaspora and outside of the Puerto Rican community. Puerto Rico is not the tourist paradise that we see on television. There's been an increase in tourism commercials in the United States, making Puerto Rico look like this amazing utopia. It's like going to Miami in the Caribbean, but what they're hiding is the repression. They're hiding the privatization. They're hiding the neo-colonialist insanity that's going on the island. And I want to again thank you, Jose, por hablar con nosotros hoy. We will have you on again. Familia, this has been your May 22nd edition of Despierta Boricua. Again, for the final time, thank you, Jose Escoda, for joining us today. Thank you for the listening audience for being with us. Please join us next month for another podcast. Please click subscribe here to the YouTube channel and click all notifications so that you can know when we post again in June. We'll be bringing you another podcast in about a month. Como siempre, que viva Puerto Rico libre.
Viva Puerto Rico libre. Gracias, Ben.
Gracias, hermano.